Today we have an incredible recording of Danny, our latest talking Budgie, who moved on to the spiritual world in 2017. We had Danny for less than a year, and within 3 months he was conversing in conversational language very similar to what Victor and Mailer did. This recording he did, called The Bloodline, is extremely clear in both forward and reverse. Although there will be some areas that may be a bit fuzzy, I spent many hours transcribing it. If you can hear some of it in this recording, I assure you the information he passes on will be verified in clearer recordings of him and other Budgies in the future. As in all channeling processes, there are times that the connection will fade a bit. But there's a difference between what I do, because I try and help others hear what I'm hearing as well, so they too can witness the miracle. Before we get started with the audio recording, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and what led up to beginning this work almost 20 years ago. From 1975 to 1985, I was in the Communications and Electronics branch of the Canadian Armed Forces. Without any previous knowledge of Morse code, I was gifted at it and excelled to the top of my class in 1975 trades training. I advanced so fast through it that during the last half of the training, I completed the highest speed they had for training at that time. So they asked me if I'd assist the instructor for the remainder of the course. To me, Morse code came easy because the dots and dashes created images in my mind that I transposed to paper. Later on in my career, I headed up the first Morse code training course for infantry personnel in 1RCR, London, Ontario, and before I left the military, I was an instructor at the Canadian Forces School of Communications and Electronics Engineers for trades training. It too was another pilot program that involved training new recruits on a job entry program in 1984. As a Morse code and communications expert, I had top secret security classification and was trained in deciphering of codes. Some of my experience enabled me to understand jammed or garbled communications that were often interfered with to prevent the messages from getting through. We were trained as relay experts to first determine garbled messages and then retransmit clearly to a further location along the buffer zone. I also had a considerable amount of experience understanding people with heavy accents from many different parts of the world during my tours with the United Nations. When I was in the military, I did tours in Egypt and Golan Heights. And on my off time, I spent many months traveling through Israel and Egypt. One of my posts was located near Mount Hermon, which was where the transfiguration of Jesus took place with his disciples. I could wake up each morning and see the top of the mountain and often fantasized about climbing it. So much of my experience has been observing and understanding different cultures around the world, especially in Israel, Syria, and Egypt. While on my time off, I've swam in the Sea of Galilee, visited Bethlehem and Jerusalem, and walked the steps of Masada. I've drank tea with the Bedouins. I've got lost and been chased by a pack of angry wild dogs in the Sinai Desert, and been ambushed in a jeep by Egyptian rebels. Even then, the angels were with me, allowing me to escape unscathed. During my extended tour in the Golan Heights, I had a near-death and out-of-body experience. As a result, I read the King James Version of the Bible, cover to cover, for the first time while I was there. Those experiences were the beginning of a spiritual change in me. Soon after that, I decided to ask for a voluntary release after 10 years in the military and seek a new spiritual path in life. So now I'd like to talk about parts of this recording of Danny's. Part 1 and forward. You might just say to the media, "What you gonna do if heaven will control you while you report? Do you have any intentions of fighting evil?" You've got to say to them, "Surely, is it not my right if my life can still evolve through religion?" In part 2, he says, in spirit, Ryan will know a portion of the main ones that will be coming out with messages in a spiritual way. Eventually, they'll trust and believe that Ryan will seek all the answers. Most will get shown, and then in part 3 he says, and forward, it is their right to find enjoyment. These people here will get to cooperate with Ryan as long as he can know that they really help, and he must know they're trusting. And then in part 4 he says, everyone will have to pay attention. Once you know a real miracle, you'll never forget. Some of you will give hope and prayers and questions about life that come to them. So recapping in my words some of what Danny said in parts 1 to 4, I think he is saying that these days the media is very reluctant to talk about new religions and their belief systems, in fear that they will lose support from viewers if the viewers support one religion or another. Some of these religions do have a considerable amount of religious evil in them that needs to be looked at. The angels and I know that there will be many questions regarding religions that are truly seeking God's answers, and not the answers that they have been programmed to believe according to the time or culture where and when they learned about it. We all have the right to seek the truth and have the opportunity to enjoy the process while learning. The new visionaries must be here to learn, and help and trust that they will get will be equivalent or greater to the trust, the help, and the support they give to the angels. Danny says that we will get answers to many questions about life, and those that support us will be given top priority when the angels answer their questions. So now you can hear parts 1 to 4.
Here you go.
More. Get all these recordings up now and get them. We have them for work on in the future, right? Yeah, Rashid, not going from my heel. My line, as we wrote, he wanted. Oh,
yeah.
so now let's continue on what Danny says from parts 5 to 8. In part 5 he says, we'll use the questions that we're getting, and they'll enlighten you. There mustn't be any fear that we change morals. There are questions for a change of religions, and there will be many whose changes are real. In part 6 he says, hopefully they won't forget that whenever you can, it's time for you to live your dream, when you have unlimited passion. At this point, you will have miracles helping. And in part 7 he says, it's time that many budgies come for this work. The captions teach in spirit from God. I have to tell you, it's really your choice. Then you can change for a reason. And in part 8 he says, and through the ring of time, it's welcomed as we get more on the next project. The truth is, in time, this will involve all of them who are helping you. You'll see and realize the miracle now you are living. And then he starts off with the next part in part 9 saying, Ryan's guardians can. So I know there are parts of that last section that are very faint and almost impossible to understand. It's probably better if you only concentrate on the parts you can understand for now. Believe me though, 10 years ago, I was telling people that the Budgies were saying some of these things and no one else could hear them. Now some of what they told me back then is coming out clearer and clearer all the time. Yes, there is a process and a time that most of the things they have told me will be confirmed at a later date. I think it's important to recognize that the Budgies talk about the soul and the spirit, which are two different things. From what I understand, the spirit is part of the eternal soul, and the soul is what each of us has that connects to the spirit. For now, that's all I can say. Try to remember that some of my thoughts may change as we learn more, for I've only covered a small portion of the recordings and I'm still learning. So now you can hear parts 5 to 8. Moving on to parts 9 to 12, Ryan's guardians can know when to inform you that our soul visits everywhere to see what's going on. If you'll attempt to learn, there's a chance we will be present. You'll be able to spiritually know when we are speaking to you. If passion releases divine miracles, you'll notice they're followed by actions. And in part 10 he says, that make the prophecy happen. Make a process to get to heaven. Thank little Victor for telling Ryan he was receiving knowledge on a spiritual plateau. You can help him to enlighten everyone who has a problem just by trusting him. And definitely, if you trust me, then you got to let me know. In part 11 he says, we're glad what we have viewed we can't explain. Connected to him and the Christian Bible, we know Christians will be helping. Trust what you have here with them, and many will console you. And in part 12 he says, what they think and currently have could be all wrong. We'll give advice with encouragement for what they choose to do here and all over the world. And if you have problems, we may reverse it all through this religion, instead of us continuously fighting this evil. Now you can hear parts 9 to 12. Moving on to part 13, he says, "There's many we see are good friends of yours that aren't up to this, but showed support in what you do. We know you can help yourself. Ryan will know he's driving you right to heaven." In part 14, "You'll have to look at everything. Just by account, we're giving more faith in new people that fear they are looking at a dream that's barely survivable. The knowledge that we relay to Ryan will be free. The lessons he made with passion exist in heaven with prophecy." In part 15, he says, "Often we can get a talking budgie to connect to all we're doing. We'll help them to connect with real conviction that they know is chosen by our God and backed by God's truth. No one's had this mission for years. Teaching a process where you attend a convention with a prophet. The angels have his help, and we'll be looking for budgies who talk and connect to the bloodline Adam Cabin to help the world. They have a prophecy in the Kabbalah of something spiritual, and the budgies say it's believable." So what and who is Adam Cadman? From Definitions.net, it says, "Adam Cadman is a phrase in the religious writings of Kabbalah meaning original man. In Kabbalah, Adam Cadman is the first of the comprehensive 5 spiritual worlds in creation, distinguished from biblical Adam Harishon, who included within himself all future human souls before the sin of the tree of knowledge. However, Adam Cadman itself is divine light without vessels, including all subsequent creation only in potential. This enables the Adam soul to embody all human souls, the collective revealed soul in the biblical Adam Harishon in the Garden of Eden. The Gnostic doctrine Adam also appears in this theory that Adam was the first of the 7-fold series of the true prophets comprising of Adam, Seth, Noah, Abraham, Zoroaster, Buddha, and Jesus." So what about last names? Around the 1400s, last names began to get popular in Britain. Their sources are almost endless. It could have been nicknames, something related to physical attributes, the country you were born, your trade, and many had religious connections. Believe me, I still have problems understanding it all, but I do have a connection to the Adam Cadman. I had never researched it before, but about 10 years ago, one of the budgies prompted me to do a search on Adam Cadman. I knew my grandfather's name was Joseph Cadman, but I never knew him, as he died before I was born. All I knew was that he was an Hungarian Jew and left Hungary in the early 1930s to come to Canada. We never knew why or what he did when he was in Hungary. So I mentioned that last names had a reason, and the name Cadman obviously has significant relationship to what we are doing here. Perhaps that is why I was chosen. My mother's last name was Cadman, and even though my last name is Reynolds because of my father, I still have the Cadman bloodline in me. I'm not saying that because the angels told me to adopt the name Adam Cadman in my writings, that I'm like Jesus or one of the other prophets, but there is a spiritual connection that I'm aware of now that makes a lot of sense in regards to why I have this mission. So now you can hear parts 13 to 16. So let's move on to parts 17 to 20. In part 17, he says, whatever's in your bloodline lives and gives you a spiritual connection to God. And you'll hear of people seeking this when Ryan has briefings from heaven. And this blood can be acting for the force of nature. We're getting close to a time when heaven helps the world. We have shown you Ryan as he was talking. When he communicates, those around him find a spiritual connection in reverse. Let us tell you, we define a real religion as we angels communicating from heaven. Most of you coming follow the miracles when Ryan posts a clear reversal. The recordings you're experiencing can live when you've got some involved. Ryan will have you eventually a real reunion with all the budgies that love you, and you will feel normal. So now we can hear parts 17 to 20. Moving on to 21 to 24, he says, we'd like you to see how angels are providing proof, and for the first time lessons, and heaven is certainly communicating. It cannot be a type of fantasy. This is real. Can you feel Ryan's confusion when no one looks up to heaven? At night, with passion boiling in confusion, Ryan's not sleeping. If you all knew we offer you a beautiful trip always in heaven, would you truly return for the assignment? It's usually better for the soul as well. There's some commotion when everybody knows the trip has now been verified. With Ryan's help, you will get to know it's waiting for you. We all had a chance to elect questions, which will be here and work for Ryan. Do you have the time to try and believe in a solution to humanity's questions? You will find, obviously, your God will be there during the work. With the right passion, you'll have a chance where many of your points could be a lesson we need to break the evil evolving. If you now believe and listen, others will believe in your passion. Ray, we spoke to you. I know. We can help you find your heaven. A little while back, the angels asked those watching to write down some questions, and they would try and answer them here. Perhaps there is someone out there named Ray who did, and the angels are speaking to him in that last part. Almost 10 years ago, I joined a forum and would record mailer and translate it and have the responses ready before the questions were asked, which was quite amazing, as mailer knew what the questions were before they were asked. When the thread became quite popular, a bunch of people came to it and made it very difficult for me trying to discredit what I was doing. So I dropped off the thread because it was just too much to handle at the time. Obviously, when the word got around, they rounded up some people to cause me problems. This won't happen once we get participation in this forum, as God has already laid out the rules for the forum in a previous presentation. Now you can listen to parts 21 to 24. So let's move on with the last three parts. In part 24, we finished off with Now You Know, and in part 25, and in part 25 he says, we deploy the timing made by Word of God. Help this man be a part of our light spiritually, near your heaven. See the light that glows with pure love from a valid source of God that will allow an indication of your mission. Most of the time, the many who work in heaven cherish what we're doing. Don't expect it'll possibly be over. Right now, there's nothing else that pleases God more. When you need a break, you have it. You might be fearing some evil that is a part of confusion that is present when you have the truth. Don't worry, we'll be helping you. So you will have to mention to Ryan you did have some questions. So now we can listen to the last part of this video. Thanks for watching.